Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we discuss a rather rare force. Alas, I wish they were more common, for as I projected with my lore video on Khorne, the blood-soaked berserker is all well and good, but I think it actually diminishes Khorne. He is more nuanced than that, more alluring. So, let us hear about a force that epitomizes the old Khorne, the old allure. An army that sends shivers down the enemy's spines, makes the enlightened and informed general lose hours of sleep. For I believe in the Blood Pact, Khorne fields a force as formalized, disciplined, fierce, and fanatical as the regiments of the Death Corps of Krieg. Welcome to the Blood Pact. Now this is a simpler entry today, as I rather overdid it on Wednesday, but please do stick around to the end, for we have forged a narrative vote. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, The Blood Pact. The Blood Pact is a warrior chaos cult dedicated to the service of the chaos god Khorne that is engaged in trying to maintain the grip of the forces of chaos on the Sabbat worlds. They are sworn to the service of Archon Gower, the leading chaos warlord of the Sabbat world sector, and are named the Blood Pact after the chaos ritual in which they are sworn into the Archon's service. The ritual requires the Blood Pact initiate to slice the palms of his hands on the jagged edges of the Archon's power armor. The Blood Pact is highly unusual among Khorne'S chaos cults in that it fights as a highly disciplined army rather than the disorganized warbands of berserkers that normally characterize Khorne'S devotees. Comprised of both highly trained human troops and Xenos mercenaries, the forces of the Blood Pact were instrumental in Chaos's victory in overrunning the Sabbat worlds, and are equally important in defending the forces of Chaos's gains from the ongoing Imperial Sabbat Worlds crusade. The Blood Pact is easily the equal of standard Astra Militarum regiments in its discipline and effectiveness. The history of the Blood Pact. The exact origin of the Blood Pact remains unknown to Imperial historians, but fragmentary evidence and the legends of the Sabbat worlds themselves indicate that the pact originated approximately 3,000 standard years ago on the world of Gower at the edge of the sector. At that time, Gower was a feral planet whose tribesmen were ruled by a feudal warlord called the Gower. The Gower led a priesthood dedicated to the chaos god Khorne. This priesthood eventually became a martial force that served as the Gower's elite bodyguard and transformed its savage sacrificial rites into a highly effective tradition of martial discipline. Over time, the Gower's people gained access to spaceflight technology and began to spread his influence across other planets in the Sabbat worlds. As the Gower's rule spread, it became a mark of nobility to have entered into the Blood Pact with the Gower and become part of his elite troops. Eventually, this group of Khorne'S warriors grew until it had achieved the size of an army in its own right and became known as the Blood Pact. Imperial intelligence now estimates there may be as many as 750,000 warriors currently in the Blood Pact, an unprecedented size for a Khorne'S cult, and every member has been inducted into the pact personally by the current Gower. Imperial forces first learned of the Blood Pact's existence when the Sabbat Worlds Crusade was launched in year 755 Millennium 41 to retake control of that sector from the forces of Chaos. The Sabbat Worlds were a relatively new acquisition of the Imperium of Man, having only been colonized in the 35th millennium, when the forces of Chaos had first been driven from the sector by an Imperial crusade led by Saint Sabbat, a woman said to have been blessed by the Emperor, and for whom the sector was later named. Around the year 600, Millennium 41, a large Chaos army commanded by the warlord known as Archon Nadzibar had conquered the Sabbat worlds. Nadzibar's forces were not a single army, but an alliance of many different Chaos warbands drawn from across the sector, each led by its own warlord, who was known as a Magister. These Magisters served as Nadzibar's lieutenants, and their names still ring in the ears of those who suffered at the hands of Chaos in the Sabbat worlds, including Anakwanar Sek, Enoch Inokenti, Sholan Skara, Herator Asphodel, Nokad the Blighted, and Urlok Gower, the Gower of the Blood Pact. In 755, Millennium 41, the High Lords of Terra granted the Lord Militant Slado the rank of War Master, and ordered him to raise an army of the Imperial Guard to undertake a new Imperial crusade to liberate the Sabbat world sector from the control of Chaos. Slado went about the task diligently, and eventually his massive and well-equipped Imperial army faced the forces of Chaos on the world of Balhot. Though the battle cost Slado his life, he went to meet the Emperor with the knowledge that the Chaos troops had been routed from the field, and Archon Nadzibar had been slain. After protracted and bloody infighting amongst the surviving Chaos Magisters, a new Archon emerged from the ranks of the various warlords to lead the forces of Chaos in the Sabbat worlds, Urlok Gower of the Blood Pact. Under the new Archon, the Blood Pact soon became the heart of the Chaos forces, greatly enlarging its numbers and expanding its capabilities as many smaller Chaos warbands chose to undertake the pact with Gower to garner his favour and share in his spoils. Only a few years after the Battle of Balhaut, Imperial intelligence recognized the Blood Pact as the most elite of the Chaos formations they faced in the sector as the crusade ground on. The Blood Pact demonstrated its unusual effectiveness as a disciplined military unit for a Khorne'S cult during its victory at the Battle of the Akarite Peninsula on the world of Belshir Binary in year 771 Millennium 41. Belshir was a vital world for both sides in the Sabbat World's crusade because of its status as the primary source and refinery of promethium fuel in the stellar neighborhood. A force composed of 200 Blood Pact warriors, supported by 4 Stalk tanks and 2 of the Loxatl Xenos brood groups, succeeded at cutting off and destroying a much larger force of 3,000 Imperial Guardsmen, led by the Pact officer named Vesh Etogar. Etogar was his rank, equivalent to Colonel. The Chaos forces had lain in stifling heat for 3 full solar days, without breaking their cover, until the Imperial Guardsmen had moved into the optimal position for their ambush to succeed. The resulting slaughter of the Imperials had taken only 22 minutes. As a result of this Blood Pact victory, the crucial promethium refineries of the Akarite Peninsula remained under the control of the forces of Chaos for a further 15 standard months. Beliefs. The Blood Pact adherents, like their allies amongst the Sons of Sek, possess an unusual view of Chaos theology, for they do not hate the Emperor as an enemy of Chaos, but venerate him as another embodiment of the Warp. They believe the Emperor to be simply another Warp entity, like a demon or the Chaos gods themselves. They see him as a misguided prophet for humanity, who has seen the power of the Warp, but who misled his followers into believing that it should be opposed. The Blood Pact and their allies believe that it is the holy task of their cults to spread the truth about the God Emperor and the Warp, and to bring the people of the Imperium back into the fold of worship of the powers of Chaos, because in truth, they are already venerating a creature of the Warp. For these cultists, the Emperor is already akin to the entities they worship, for he, too, is powered by the Warp and has been changed by his contact with the Immaterium. For these cultists, the Emperor is actually a symbol of what they aspire to, as they wish to become one with the warp and be forever changed by this communion. Thus in their belief system, the schism of mistaken faith embraced by the Imperium must be healed and humanity brought back into the embrace of chaos. They hold that the Imperium does not need to be destroyed, but only reformed, so that it understands the true nature of the warp and its inhabitants. In this view, the Imperial Creed has led the people of the Imperium down the wrong path for millennia, and the Blood Pact and their allies believe that they are engaged in a war to defeat its gatekeepers, so they can teach humanity the truth of the enlightenment that chaos offers, and that they have already been worshipping without realizing it. Organization. The Blood Pact, originally formed from warriors drawn from all the worlds around Gower, known as the Sanguinary Worlds, is now a highly diverse military unit. The officers of the Pact encourage the integration of other chaos cults and warbands into the Pact, especially traitor Astra Militarum units. The Blood Pact also counts amongst its troops various Xenos mercenaries, like the quadrupedal reptilian Loxatl. When Earl Gower prepared his Blood Pact to face the Imperium, he extensively studied the Astra Militarum regiments that were fighting as part of the Sabbat World's crusade to retake the sector, and modelled his Khorne'S soldiers after them. The Blood Pact warriors are trained every bit as rigorously as any soldier of the Astra Militarum, and learn the same skills of shooting, melee combat, and basic survival. They are also indoctrinated to obey their superiors in all things without question. These things, combined with their fanatical loyalty to the Archon and their Chaos Guard, mean that they will often fight to the very last man, giving and expecting no quarter. Where a regiment of guardsmen would turn tail and run, an equal number of Blood Pact warriors will grind on grimly until they or their enemies are all dead, or their objectives are complete. They do not fear death, but rather are afraid of dying with their mission incomplete, thus failing both Khorne and the Gower. The most elite units of the Blood Pact are known as the Death Brigades. Though few in number, the Death Brigades often serve as the vanguard of Blood Pact assaults, as the private company of the most senior Pact officers, or are deployed to carry out various missions as the forces of chaos equivalent to the Imperial Guard stormtroopers. They are the most skilled and the most feared of all Blood Pact units. The Blood Pact ranking system is completely different from that of the armed forces of the Imperium. The rank of a soldier, unlike in the Imperial Armed Forces, is stated after the individual's name. For example, the warrior Mabon Etogar is a soldier named Mabon, and Etogar is his rank in the Blood Pact. Higher ranks use the Archon's traditional Blood Pact rank Gower as the base, to symbolize the rank holder's increasing closeness to the Pact's master. Known ranks and their rough Imperial equivalents includes Etogar, Colonel; Damogar, Major; High Sirdar, Captain; Sirdar, Lieutenant. Wargear. Blood Pact warriors often resemble a particularly ragged and ill-kept Imperial regiment due to their reliance on Imperial pattern weapons manufactured on captured Forge worlds. They wear the same types of uniforms, either looted from dead Imperial Guardsmen or manufactured according to the basic Imperial pattern, and then adapted for the Pact's particular needs and Chaos allegiance. They wear the usual type of infantry kit, including the standard steel helmet, because their uniforms are essentially a result of plunder, manufacture and customization. No two Blood Pact troopers ever appear the same. The carapace armor, flak armor and cloth uniforms of the Pact are all dyed a faded red, the color of dried blood. One of the Pact's most sacred Khorne'S rituals is the dyeing of their clothing with the spilled blood of their enemies after a successful battle. Because of this, most Blood Pact warriors exude the smell of drying and decaying blood at all times. Their armoured vehicles also tend to be painted in this dried blood as well, and to be marked with various heretical chaos icons. such as the Chaos Star and the Mark of Khorne. A Blood Pact warrior's hands are never covered, in order that they may display the many ritual scars that they carry across their palms and knuckles, which were made at the time they swore their oath to serve Khorne and the Gower. They often continue to ritually scar themselves until a Blood Pact warrior's face and body are scarred beyond all recognition. The deeper or more severe the wounds made with the ritual combat knife every Blood Pact member carries, the more devoted to Khorne and the Blood Pact's cause a warrior is believed to be by his comrades. While Blood Pact equipment is largely similar to that of the Imperial Guard, there are some noticeable differences. Unlike many Chaos Cult forces, who use decrepit weapons, the Blood Pact are armed with freshly manufactured weapons of Imperial design, constructed on Chaos-held forge worlds, as well as a number of pieces looted from battlefield dead. The majority of standard Blood Pact infantry warriors are equipped with a standard Imperial las rifle, a las pistol or auto pistol sidearm, and a belt of stick grenades. Officers may use a bolt pistol or plasma pistol as a substitute. Along with the typical bayonet, a trench axe, pike or saber knife will serve a warrior in melee combat, while higher-ranking officers will usually be equipped with a chainsword, chain axe, or even a power weapon. In addition to this, every Blood Pact warrior is issued a ritual combat knife. While this may be used as a last resort, most often this rusted, jagged knife is used for the performing of arcane blood rituals dedicated to Khorne. Blood Pact armor is normally fashioned from iron plates, riveted to rough cloth that has been dyed with blood, as mentioned above. In other cases, some Blood Pact warriors will have access to the same patterns of carapace armor and flak armor used by the Imperial Guard. This is accompanied by mixed and matched pieces looted from dead Imperial Guardsmen, as well as a spiked bowl helmet for head protection. Lastly, the Blood Pact signature trademark is the metal grotesque, a face mask with a grimacing or leering face accompanied by an oversized hook nose and chin that is issued to each and every human Blood Pact member. While grotesques issued to the standard grunts are fashioned from iron, they can also be made in higher grade metals such as copper, brass, silver and gold for the Pact's officers. Masks made from different metals are used to identify rank, with gold signifying the highest ranking Etogars. In some cases, often for common troopers, the grotesque will be welded or otherwise affixed to the spiked helmet. Combat Doctrine. Unlike most Khorne'S Chaos cults, the Blood Pact is a highly disciplined military force that routinely makes use of standard military tactics and strategies, rather than simply rushing headlong into the battlefield to engage the enemy as rage-fueled berserkers until they or their foe have fallen. As a result, the standard Blood Pact trooper is armed with ranged Due to the Blood Pact's conquest of Imperial Forge worlds in the Sabbat world sector, like Urdesh and Neferthil, the Pact's warriors have access to a wide variety of Imperial patterns of infantry weaponry, artillery, and armoured vehicles. This allows the Blood Pact to fight using the Imperial Guard's own sophisticated combined armed tactics. Blood Pact armoured squadrons are generally inferior to those of the Imperial Guard, however, as they often only have access to the Urdesh pattern Steg 4 and AT-70 Reaver light tanks, though they also possess a smaller number of AT-83 Brigand-mained battle tanks, and even a handful of Baneblade super heavy tanks, which provide an unusually strong counterpunch for a Chaos cult. The Blood Pact can also field a lighter version of the Space Marines' Demon engine, known as the Defiler, that the Pact refers to as a Stalk tank. Like their larger counterparts, Stalk tanks move around on 6-piston armoured arachnid legs and are armed with mini turrets containing twin-linked pulse lasers. There are rumours that the Blood Pact can also deploy psychers known as Gore Mages to face the forces of the Emperor, but I will not go into detail on this, as I feel this is old lore. Khorne does not suffer the witch to live. Threat Index and Imperial Policy. The Blood Pact is a direct and grave military threat to Imperial security in the Segmentum Pacificus. Its disciplined and trained nature means that it represents the elite branch of the arch-enemy's host. Furthermore, concern must be expressed as to its increasing size. Gower is a charismatic leader, and the Pact is an aspirational order for many young warriors. The Blood Pact is also a painful objective lesson as to how the primary skills and strengths of the noble Astra Militarum may be turned against the Imperium itself. Imperial military leaders are urged to suppress Blood Pact activity wherever it is found. The appearance of Blood Pact forces must be communicated at all costs to Fleet or Subsector Command, as it indicates a pre-planned tactical enemy action, as opposed to a random uprising or raid. The violent heretical legions of chaos are ordinarily a supreme menace to the Imperium of man because of their bludgeoning ferocity and near numberless strengths. The Blood Pact is a rare example of a more precise and deliberately destructive force. Records also show that though the Blood Pact shows little quarter, they are more likely to attempt to turn and recruit Imperial soldiers than any other Chaos force. Peculiarities. A marked trait of the Blood Pact is its willingness to collaborate with Xenos breeds and alien mercenaries from the Outworlds and Imperial marches to achieve military objectives. Most notably, the Blood Pact often operates alongside non-human mercenaries called the Loxatl, using them as shock troops. The Loxatl are sinuous, non-humanoid quadrupeds evolved from amphibious beings. Slightly larger than a human, they're extremely swift and dexterous, and use large dew claws to give them purchase on any surface, allowing them to run up walls and across ceilings. Out of water, the vision, hearing and smell of these grey-skinned aliens is dull, and they rely on powerful taste and vibration sensing to hunt and corner prey. The Loxatl use a weapon of alien design known as a flechette blaster. They carry these powerful weapons, along with ammunition bandoliers, on their torsos, mounted on mechanical armatures that fire the weapons via some unknown mind impulse device. This leaves the Loxatl's limbs freed for climbing. The blasters fire deadly shot bursts, filled with millions of razor-sharp filaments that shred armor and cause grievous wounds in their target's flesh. Loxatl are believed to operate in small brood group units of biological kin, communicating by vibration, subsonic calls and, when in close proximity, iridescent patterns that they are able to flash and move across their skins. Imperial Guardsmen have reported that nearby Loxatl activity can often be detected by a nauseating smell, a mix of rancid milk and crushed mint. Notable Blood Pact members. Gower. To the Blood Pact, the only personality of note is Gower himself, for not only is he their warlord and commander-in-chief, but it is to him personally that they pledge themselves forever in blood. Gower sometimes leads the massed Pact forces himself, but so tight is its discipline, and so great his faith in it, he is happy to charge divisions to the command of senior officers or other warlords. Sec. Sec was a formidable and notorious magister of the forces of chaos, who served under both Archon Nadzibar and Archon Gower during the Sabbat Worlds Crusade. Sec was responsible for the creation of the elite chaotic warband known as the Sons of Sec. Innocenti. Enoch served as one of Gower's trusted demagogue lieutenants. The Sons of Sec. Magister Sec, one of the Archon Gower's closest subordinates, forged his own chaos band and based it on the model of the Blood Pact, and they are known as the Sons of Sec. While still relatively new to the war for the Sabbat Worlds, initial reports indicate that the Sons of Sec may, in fact, be superior in combat to their Blood Pact cousins. In addition to being a larger, stockier build, the Sons are also equipped with higher quality gear and weapons. The sons are also better motivated and led, and even include an officer similar to an Imperial Commissar, known as a Scourger, to maintain discipline and morale. This is something that even the unusually disciplined Blood Pact lacks. The Sons of Sec were created not only to fight the Imperium, but also to serve as Magister Sec's vanguard, for when he eventually attempts to overthrow the Gower and assume the position of Archon over the forces of chaos in the Sabbat world sector. Most if not all of the Sons of Sec's initial training took place on the chaos-occupied world of Geryon, and they were first encountered by the Geryon resistance. They later played a major role in defending that world from the Imperium Liberation Force. The Sons were trained and equipped in large part due to the intelligence provided by the ex-Blood Pact officer Maybon Etogar and the captured Imperial Lord General Militant Noshez Sturm, who eventually defected to the forces of chaos in general, and the Sons of Sec in particular. Sturm later repented his actions, and in lieu of being executed by Ibrim Gaunt, chose to take his own life to regain his honor. End quote. As we have heard, the Blood Pact are a fanatical force, and in my mind, they are every bit as lethal as the Death Corps of Krieg. Hence I put up a very simple vote. Do we send the Blood Pact to Abundance Tertius, our ongoing campaign, or do we leave them out of this campaign, as they are simply too similar to Krieg, who are already involved? You decide! Is it Krieg vs the Blood Pact on the horizon, or have we heard enough about them? Please go to the comments section and put in a thumbs up emote, or yes, or thumbs down emoji, and a no. Forge the narrative. You decide. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the Blood Pact. If so, then do please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then turn on the notifications, as I would not want you to miss out. If you are a regular gentle listener and see the worth in what we are doing, then do please consider supporting us on Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.